The Howls of a Blind Wendigo, written by Throw the Puppy. I'm a truck driver with a mid-sized company. My assigned truck being a long-nosed Peterbilt with one of those driver-controlled searchlights mounted just above the mirror. You're gonna need to know that for the story. Anyway, I've been driving for about 4 years. I've gone over 650,000 miles, and I've somehow managed to not lose my mind in the process. One autumn day, about a year back, I was given the delivery that would bring me an experience that I hadn't thought would exist, except in my worst nightmares. I had received a message on my truck's computer to make a multi-stop run from Indianapolis to Duluth, then from Duluth to a town called Ellie. The run to Duluth had been no problem with a 2-day trip. The run from Duluth to Ellie was a bit trickier. What with the quickest legal run being Minnesota Route 1 from Minnesota 61. It was that certain kind of night where everything was shrouded in darkness. The moon was covered by clouds and a winter storm was on the horizon, making the air even colder than it already was. I figured that I deserved a nice warm cup of coffee after this drive was over. The drive along 61 was uneventful, with only a couple of cars and semi-tractors on the road this late into the night. The radio was calling for a light forecast of hazy rain, with a relatively thick fog until that afternoon. All the more reason to get this run finished, I supposed. Sometime along Route 1, my trailer began shaking violently with my truck having difficulty in pulling it. I pulled along a flat line of grass, and I noticed that one of my tires on my trailer had ruptured. Annoyed with losing time, I pulled into a small grove, and I parked along a worn dirt path facing the highway. To the rear of my tractor was a thick bundle of northern forest that likely hadn't seen a human in decades. A quiet wind washed over me as I relayed a breakdown message to my company, receiving another message that a tow wouldn't be out until morning. No problem. I've got a fridge full of food and a satellite for TV. Several hours passed as I laid in my bed. A windstorm woke me up as I tossed and then turned around trying to get my bearings. That wasn't wind I was hearing. The best I can describe it is the sound of metal sliding against metal, like the brakes of a locomotive. The noise was some distance away. I would guess roughly a quarter mile to the rear if I had to. But the noise was getting closer, coming towards the left of my truck, somewhat towards the front of the trailer. I could hear what sounded like the tapping of fingers or claws against my trailer. The sound of footsteps marching through the thick grass alerted me to the fact that this may just be a harmless animal. Wishing to take a look and ease my nerves, I slid the curtains open and I came face to back with the stuff of nightmares. The antlers reached to the top of my truck's windows. The creature brandishing them was hunched over, a bipedal mass of skin and bones, with the skull of some deer or elk. Fearfully, I turned the searchlights on to get a better look at the thing in question, and to hopefully frighten it off. I wish that I hadn't. The light itself hadn't alerted the creature, but me moving myself in the truck had set it into a hunched stance. It was keeping an ear open for some form of prey, I presumed. I noticed empty eye sockets that seemed to go on forever. They were slotted into the ancient skull of some sort of deer or elk. I was afraid of turning the key in fear of rousing the monster's predatory hunger. It looked near starvation, as though it had been years since it last ate. I sat and I waited. It was near 5 o'clock. The tow wouldn't come until around 7. A buck, roughly a 10-pointer, meandered into the field before spotting the creature in question. This thing has to have some great hearing since it didn't see the deer wander into its sightlines. It was blind. It has to have been. Moments passed before the buck began chomping on berries from a nearby bush. The blind monster heard the sounds and pounced. From 15 feet, it took all but 5 seconds for the buck to have been completely gutted and torn apart. The creature didn't seem to want the buck for food. It seemed to kill it more or less, as a rather twisted form of entertainment. I had seen enough. Turning the engine over, the monster looked in my general direction and roared threateningly as it rushed to make contact with my truck. I managed to pull forward just enough that it made contact with the trailer instead. The trailer lifted up a few inches as the sound of bending metal embedded itself into my ears. Shifting from 3rd to 5th and then continuing to 10, the creature was still in chase until I crossed over a hill. Looking back through my mirrors, the monster was gone. I pulled off the road and got out of my truck. The sounds of scraping metal were far away, replaced now by the quiet of rustling trees. I continued driving again until I came upon an area that trucks could park in, well lit and paved with asphalt. Much better and safer than the grove from earlier. The afternoon came and I went to inspect the damage from last night's incident done to my trailer. There were claw marks etched into the driver's side of the trailer. They went on for the entire 53 feet. There was a massive dent in the trailer, roughly 2 feet from the end closest to the truck itself. It reminded me that I wasn't just fortunate to be alive, but I was also lucky. The delivery went off without complications, since the tow only had to change a tire. And I went home several days later, the creature still on my mind. I went online to try and figure out what this thing was. The skull of a deer and the possible bloodlust for people brought me to several conclusions. The most probable ones were that I was either losing my mind in the mountains, or that I had come face to face with a creature from Native American folklore, a nightmare known as the Wendigo. Essentially, it's what becomes of you if you cannibalize human flesh. I have no plans of stopping on Route 1 overnight again. Talks with the locals have included everything from ghost to, of course, the same Wendigo that I encountered. I went down Route 1 again last week. The sounds of scraping metal were heard more than once, and I saw a shadow move across the forest at a blistering speed. I noticed that it didn't get too close this time. It only got close enough so that I could see the fog from its breath. It knows who I am, and it's just waiting for me to let down my guard. Why I'll Never Buy a Car Off Craigslist, written by Rapture 1960. Buying a car is probably the least fun activities out there. It ranks up there with yard work and paying taxes. Dealing with the infamous Thai guy and his "What can I do to get you in this car today?" boiler room sales pitch. And then being shuffled from one person to the next. All the while hearing their various sales pitches of extra coverage options that you should really consider. It sounds about as fun as a colonoscopy, right? But after my latest experience with buying a car off Craigslist, I would willingly spend an entire afternoon with Thai Guy. Not wanting to deal with the used car dealership, I started my search on Craigslist. After scrolling through what seemed like several hundred listings, I saw one that caught my eye. 2005 Chevy Malibu, it read. 30,000 miles, interior like new. New tires, no accidents. Slight wear on body, but drives fine. $1,200 or best offer. Willing to negotiate. $1,200, I thought. It sounds too good to be true. On a whim, I decided to call the person and just check it out. If it turned out to be too good, I'd just have to go back to digging through Craigslist. Which, to be honest, I wasn't looking forward to. I called the number and a man's voice answered on the other end. I told him that I had seen his listing and I was interested in checking out the car.
Oh, great. Yeah, it's my grandma's old car. She passed recently. And, well, she wasn't doing too much driving as she got older. Except to the doctor's appointments, that is.
He said with a little laugh.
I'm free this afternoon if you'd like to come and see it.
Sure thing, I said.
Okay, great. I live on 50th in Washington. If that's not too far from you. My apartment is right next to that gas station. The name's Mark, by the way.
50th in Washington. I know exactly where that is. I'll see you this afternoon, I replied. Later that afternoon, I found myself getting off the city bus and walking a few blocks to Mark's apartment. I turned around the corner to his apartment complex and was greeted by a large gate and a sign that read, Desert Palms Luxury Condos, a private community. Wow, nice place, I thought. I called Mark and I told him that I was there.
Okay,
he responded.
I have to buzz you in. Hang on.
The gate let out a loud noise and then rolled open. I walked in, found his apartment, and knocked on his door. A well-dressed, middle-aged man opened the door. Hi, you must be Al. Nice to meet you, he said and gave me a firm handshake. Can I get you anything? Water? Coffee? He asked. Somewhat taken aback by his hospitality, I paused for a second, then said, no, thank you, but I appreciate the offer. You just want to look at the car, right? He laughed a little. Well, I mean, I stammered, not wanting to be rude. It's okay, I get it. God knows I know what it's like not to have a car. He drifted off. Anyway, let me get the keys and I'll show you where it's parked. He got the keys and then led me to the car, and I started looking at it. Sure enough, the tires were brand new. The interior looked great. And just like on the listing, there was some external wear, but nothing that would give me pause. You want to drive her around the block and see what you think? He suggested and then held out the keys. I took the keys from him, started the car, and let him get in the passenger's seat. I drove around and tested the AC. Yeah, it was good and cold. The radio? Yep, definitely check, as Guns N' Roses' Welcome to the Jungle blasted from the speakers, startling me. Hey, sorry, I forgot that I'd turned it up that far, Mark said with a grin. I laughed back. No, it's okay, it's a good song, I said. I continued to drive the car around his apartment complex. And as we pulled back into the parking lot, he looked at me. So, what do you think? I hesitated for a second. $1,200, you said. Yeah, but I'm willing to negotiate, he said hopefully. I already had my mind made up. I can do $1,200. It just so happens that I got paid yesterday. I can go and get a check from the bank tomorrow, if that works. Sure, Mark replied. A few days later, I was the proud new owner of a 2005 Chevy Malibu. The car was great, it drove smooth, and I had almost forgotten what it was like to drive a car that didn't shake as soon as you got it over 45. One day, I was getting in my car after work, and I noticed a weird smell as I sat down. I thought to myself. I didn't notice that when I got it. I thought for a moment, and then I realized that I did have to take my dog to the vet the other day. The poor mutt had gotten stung by a bee. That, plus the summer heat, and, well, it was no wonder why my car smelled off. I made a note to get an air freshener. At first, the air freshener helped. I got into my car the next week and smelled tropical Hawaiian breeze instead of dog in the summer. But as the summer went on, and the temperature continued to rise, the smell got worse and worse. By this point, I could definitely tell that it wasn't the smell of my dog. It almost smelled like I had forgotten to take the milk out of my car when I went to the grocery store. One day after work, I decided that I would have to find the source of that smell before it got even worse. I opened all the doors in my car. I pulled the seats all the way back. I looked in the glove compartment, under the hood, under the seats. Nothing. As I walked around to the back of the trunk, I noticed that the smell was getting stronger. Much stronger. I could feel the bile rising in my throat, as I almost vomited from how strong it was. Okay, it's in the trunk, whatever it is, I thought. I opened the trunk. To my surprise, all that was in there was my tire patch kit, some empty grocery bags, and the jack for the car. Holding my breath, I took out the tire patch kit. I smelled it. Nope, that's not it. The empty grocery bags. Again, no, nothing had spilled. I hadn't forgotten to take any groceries out. Where is the smell coming from? I wondered. I stood in front of my car for a second, not quite sure what to do. Then I noticed something that I hadn't before. On the left-hand side, in the very back, nearly hidden by the spare tire, I saw something poking out. It looked like a plastic bag. Oh, maybe I did forget to take some groceries out. That would certainly explain the smell, I reasoned to myself. I pulled on the bag. The heat had caused the bag to become flimsy, and I felt it tear. My hand broke through, and I felt something slimy and wet underneath. I tried to pull on it, but whatever it was stuck. I began to try and wiggle out whatever it was, and I immediately wished that I hadn't. To my horror, I saw something looking back at me. Not an animal. No, that would have been better. It took a second for my brain to register what it was. And when I did, my blood ran cold. It was human. A half-decomposed human head was staring back at me. I screamed, slammed the trunk shut, and immediately vomited onto the sidewalk. What the? Why is there a head in my car? Why is there a human head in my car? A million thoughts were running through my mind. Did I just buy a car from a serial killer? Did he know that it was in there? How long was it in there? After I managed to compose myself enough, I called 911. At first, the cops didn't believe me. Apparently, finding human heads in used cars isn't all that common. Who knew? The cops questioned me extensively. I showed them the Craigslist listing, and then I gave them Mark's phone number and address. According to the cops, when they raided Mark's apartment, there was nothing there. The apartment was completely empty, but whoever was there had left in a hurry. They checked Mark's mailbox. Mixed in with a pile of junk mail, there was a note that read, "Mark, I hope you haven't sold that car yet. Ben told me that there's leftovers in there. You know how much he hates those. You have to be cleaner with this stuff. Call me." It was signed J. The Night Drive, written by Mego the Ego. I'm on mobile, and I'm still shaken by this. It all happened last night. I'm not going to entirely disclose the location, but I will give my general area. This is for more than just my safety. It's also for yours too. I'm not that old, still in my teens, 17 to be exact. I'm easily frightened and terrified of many things. Well, specifically storms in this case. There's another story as to why, but that doesn't really matter here. Anyway, I had a 2.5-hour drive home, taking mostly back roads and highways in eastern North Carolina. As a teen, driving alone at night is usually nice and pleasing to me. Tonight, that wasn't the case. I left around 10:30 p.m. and my ETA to be home was a little after midnight. This was my first mistake, leaving too late. Secondly, I didn't realize that the weather was going to be so bad. I had checked beforehand and it was crystal clear, nothing unusual. As soon as I set out on the roads, that changed. The sky set black as soon as I left my location, and the lightning was nonstop from every direction. I didn't think too much of this situation as the weather changes here without warning very frequently. But something was odd. With this heavy cloud coverage and this sky-to-ground lightning like this, it was also odd not to hear thunder or see any rain. I was already uneasy from the stormy weather, just eager to get home. Cool AC and loud music kept me company as I continued. This weather continued well past the halfway point of my trip, and I finally got the dreadful feeling that something wasn't quite right. Every now and then I would see a car behind me, mostly on roads without turnoffs, and then their lights would just, vanish. It seemed off, but I figured that I had missed a road somewhere. This happened relatively frequently. Anyway, I'm heading down a familiar road. I click my Garmin GPS off and I proceed on my way home. Now, I know this road very well, and I know there isn't anywhere for you to turn off on a 16-mile strip of it. Maybe 3 miles into this strip, I see headlights come up behind me. Now, lightning is still going on furiously and keeping my anxiety spiked. I figured that maybe this was a state trooper on patrol for the night, nothing unusual. But the car seemed older the closer it got. The light shape didn't match anything that I had seen before. It was kind of strange. My eyes bounced between the mirrors and the road in front of me. Here's where I first figured out that it was something big. I glanced back more than once to check the headlights. Maybe another 3 or 4 miles into the road, and the car is gone. I mean, completely gone. The next thing I know, I look forward, definitely confused, and I see a large dog shape in the road. My first instinct was to hit my brakes, which of course I did. My car jumped, and the shape jumped towards me. It was about to collide with my windshield when I let my foot off the brake, so as not to lose control, knowing that there was no stopping it. I closed my eyes, bracing for impact, and, to my surprise, nothing happened. I stopped my car and grabbed a flashlight and shone it into the fields in the direction that the thing had jumped. There was nothing there. By this point, I was starting to break down a bit. The lightning continued. The sky still blacker than I had ever seen it. I didn't see any more cars nor animal-like creatures for a while. Towards the end of this long, inescapable strip of road, something caught my eye. This wasn't an animal or a car. It was a person. The only thing I could think while slowing my car a tad was simply, why would a person be alone in the middle of nowhere this late at night? It makes no sense to me, even now. Then, to my shrieking demise, a bright crack of lightning shot down beside where this thing was standing, giving it a ghostly light, making me scream like a little girl. I caught a glimpse of that shadow of a person before it vanished beyond my headlights. Maybe I was just a little tired, but I had never seen something like this happen. Maybe it was just a bear who nearly got struck by lightning. I had no idea. My heart was racing and I just wanted to get to my bed. I kept going down this road, hoping to find the stop sign that led to another major highway where there was sure to be traffic. I believe in ghosts. I always have. But this whole car scenario has happened twice, on the same strip of road, at the same time of night. There's no way that it can be a coincidence. My car seemed to shake even, mocking my nerves. The road stretched on longer than I thought. It seemed like a solid 15 more miles until I reached the stop sign. I feel like I'm crazy for believing this, or thinking that you will. But maybe you will drive down that road one night and you'll understand too. I have a friend who traveled that same route one night to meet me across the way. They described such similar experiences and asked me if it was something that I had noticed. If anyone has any ideas, I would love to hear them to avoid this conundrum. I have no choice but to take this road at night sometimes. And it's the only road to get me across the way to my home without going 30 miles out of the way. I haven't really slept since then. I can't look outside my window at night for the fear of that storm cloud returning. When I got home, the sky seemed to instantly clear, revealing the moon both times. Does anyone know what this could be? If anything happens during the next trip, I'll update you guys. I'm just worried. This phenomena is getting longer every trip.